Hi friends, welcome back to Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today we are going to cover the 5 steps that you need to take to get your finances together. I think oftentimes many of us are really intimidated by tackling our finances because we have this preconceived notion that it is going to be this long, complicated, drawn-out process, and I'm here to tell you that that's not the case, and it definitely does not have to be that. My goal here at the ATB is to make finances as approachable as possible, so that is the whole point of these 5 steps. They are things that you could just sit down, take a few hours, get a glass of wine, maybe get some takeout, and get it all organized and ready for your money to work for you, not the other way around. So let's go ahead and get into it. Step number 1, evaluate your past spending. This is something that I really think is crucial and not something that you want to skip. A lot of times budgeting doesn't work for us because we base it off of like ideal numbers or guesstimates, not how we are actually spending our money. And in order for you to stick to a budget, it has to be realistic. And in order to create a realistic budget, we are going to need to know where you're actually at right now. So what I usually recommend is that people go through the last 3 months of their bank statements, credit card statements, Venmo, anywhere that you have money coming in and out of. Get yourself a pack of highlighters and start highlighting that spending into categories. So one color could be food, one color bills, another color your fun money, literally whatever works for you. The whole idea here is that you are first giving yourself a visual of where your money is going, because I think a lot of times we don't even know where our money is going, especially if we've been really overwhelmed with finances. The idea of like looking back on our spending and facing that reality can be really hard, but it is such an important step. And I think sometimes that like highlighting process is a good way to kind of like dip our toes into the water, and it starts to give us a foundation that we can work upon. But you don't want to stop there, just the highlighting, because we need to know like how much you're actually spending in these categories. So the next thing you're going to do is go through all of that spending and start tallying up by category how much are you spending. And this part here is why I really recommend that you go through at least the last like 3 months of spending, because sometimes we just have a weird month where we don't spend as much money as we normally would, or maybe we like way overspent in a category, or we had a big purchase that's really just out of the ordinary. Going back through and calculating your spending over the last 3 months allows you to take an average of how much you're spending, and that is very helpful for variable spending categories. Those things like gas, groceries, eating out. A lot of times we have like no idea how much we spend in those categories because it's not like a phone bill or rent that is the same month to month. It's always different. And while there's no way for us to be able to decide exactly how much you're going to spend in those categories every month, by adding up the last few months of expenses and then figuring out the average, you're able to give yourself a more realistic number to start with on how much you want to give yourself to spend in those categories. And that is going to come in play here in the next few steps. So get yourself some highlighters and a calculator. Just use your phone. It's 2022. And start figuring out where your money has been going. And please remember, no matter what you end up figuring out based on these numbers, they are not a reflection of you or your worth. And for step number 2 is to document all of the details of your finances. Now you know where all of your spending money is going, so you are going to write that down. Write down where your fixed expenses are going. These are things like bills that are the same month to month. Again, like I said, rent, utilities, phone bill, our car insurance. Usually they're the things that like automatically come out of your account. Then write down the averages for your variable spending, which lucky for us, we already did in step 1. But on top of your spending, you also want to know things like your average income, which of course, if you are salaried, this might be very steady. But if you are someone who has multiple jobs or some part-time jobs, or you're a freelancer, this might vary month to month. So it might be, again, something that you need to go back and look at the last few months and start to average out how much you think that you're gonna make. Our goal here is to create a realistic budget, not a perfect one, so don't worry if these numbers are a little off. My rule of thumb that I always tell people is to underestimate your income and overestimate your spending. You'd rather end up making more than you thought that you would and spending less than you thought you would than the other way around. You also want to know the details of your debt. That is going to be a big part of this step as well. You want to know your due dates, how much you owe on each debt, what account that debt is coming out of, what your minimum payments are, and your interest rates on those. A lot of that information you can find under your accounts, credit cards, usually is all laid out in that statement there for you. But if you're unsure of any of that information, just contact your lender. They will let you know all of that. And finally, the last thing that you want to know in this step is the details of what your savings goals are. I've talked about sinking funds and savings goals in a bunch of different videos. I will link some up here for you. I even have a couple of awesome playlists. I'll also link those up there and in the description box down below. But generally, I tell people to pick 3 to 5 different things that they are saving for on a monthly basis to start building up that savings. If you want more in-depth information on these steps, how to create a budget in general, how to set your debt payoff goals, and how to invest, make sure that you check out my financial survival guide. I will link that down below. In there, I walk you through this whole process step by step and so much more, along with printable guides to help you to lay out all of this information and to finally feel financially confident. And speaking of goals, step 3 is going to be set yourself some financial goals. Now, I like to break financial goals down into 2 different types of goals depending on where you're at and what you're looking for. There are progress goals and outcome goals. Outcome goals are what I would say we generally think of when we think of goals. These are things like SMART goals, which I've talked about, and I will link that video up here for you. These kind of goals are based on exactly what they say, the outcome. The SMART goals method makes sure that your goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And it's a way for you to set goals that you can actually achieve and you can track your progress toward achieving that goal. But the main focus is on reaching a desired outcome. However, there's a different type of goal that I think is just as important to talk about, and that is a progress goal. Progress goals, unlike outcome-based goals, are focused more so on progress, building up habits, routines, building up a knowledge base, all of those things that you're going to need to eventually reach your outcome-based goals. I mention these because these are perfect if you are just getting started with dealing with your finances. Because a lot of times if we start to base all of our financial goals off of just outcome-based goals and we don't have the knowledge or habits set up to actually reach those goals, we're going to be disappointed. So progress-based goals are awesome for beginners or people who are just feeling really overwhelmed with their finances. To give you an example of the difference between these two, an outcome-based goal may look like, I want to pay off $5,000 of credit card debt in the next 12 months. Now, if you're following the SMART goals method, you're going to break that down even further, but for our example, that's good enough. A progress-based goal, however, might be, I want to track all of my expenses every day for a month and evaluate where my spending has been going. That doesn't have a certain outcome. The idea is just that you are establishing that habit of tracking and being conscious of your spending. And we know that building up that habit could lead to lots of different savings goals, debt payoff goals, tons of different financial goals. It's more so focused on the journey, not so much the destination. For this step 3, I highly recommend looking at creating 3 to 5 short, medium, and long-term goals. But of course, go with whatever feels right to you. I just usually recommend, especially for beginners, not overloading your plate with a ton of different goals to focus on. Now we come to step number 4, deciding on a budgeting method that works for you. There are usually 2 different kinds of budgeting methods that I recommend people to try out first. One is a zero-based budget. If you've been around here for a while, you know my love of a zero-based budget. It is what I use to pay off $20,000 of credit card debt in a year, and it is perfect for those of you with low income, high expenses, or some big financial goals, or just people who need a lot of structure in order to stick to their budget. With a zero-based budget, you are giving every single dollar that you have a job. So every time that you get paid, you go through and assign all of that money to either a spending, a debt payoff, or a savings category. And then part of that is that until you get paid again, you are tracking your expenses to see where your money is going and moving things around. I talk more about zero-based budgets in this video and tons of different videos on my channel, but that's the gist of it. The second budgeting method I like to recommend to people is the automated budgeting system. This is perfect for those of you who want a hands-off budgeting approach, something you can sit down, set up, and then really not have to worry about too much. The zero-based budget is very hands-on, but it gives you a lot of control over your finances. This automated budget is a lot more hands-off, and you get a little bit more freedom when it comes to your spending. Now, I've outlined exactly how to automate your budget, and I will link that video up here in the description box down below. However, the idea here is that you just take a few hours to set up from your money coming out of your paycheck, going into your investment accounts, into your checking account that has all of your bills and your fixed expenses coming out of. Then it filters into a savings account with all of your savings goals. And then from there, the money that is left over, that is the money that you have to spend until you get paid again. So the idea basically being you only ever have to consult one account to see how much money you have left to spend. But you still know that all of your savings goals, debt payoff goals, and your bills are all taken care of. Once you decide which budgeting method you want to try out, you're going to take all of the information that we figured out from steps 1, 2, and 3 and start planning out where your money is going to go. Using things like your average income and average variable expenses, along with the goals that you set up, this allows you to set up a solid plan for your finances. But as you may have heard me say before, budgeting is a verb, not a noun. So you want to continue to evaluate how your budget is working for you. And that is where step 5 comes in with our monthly evaluations or monthly check-ins. Chances are, especially if you're new to budgeting, that you are going to have to just like tweak some things and figure things out as you go. Maybe you've given yourself way too much money to spend in one category. Maybe you completely forgot an expense. All of this is totally normal, and it's the reason that you want to continue to come back in and check with your budget to see if you're still on track to reach your goals, what works, what doesn't, and maybe even reevaluate if you just need to switch to a totally different budgeting system. Like I said earlier, our goal is to create a budget that works for you, not to create a perfect budget. I am still constantly tweaking and changing up my budget because as our life changes and our goals change, our budget is going to change as well. And you might even find in the beginning that shorter weekly check-ins work a lot better for you than like a little bit of a longer monthly check-in. It doesn't really matter as long as you are reevaluating and making sure that you are on track. And if you enjoyed this video or you learned something cool, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. And I will see you all next time. Bye.